When I was a kid, I used to build forts out of couch cushions and blankets, pile them up at the edges, pretend the floor was hostile territory, pretend that the inside of the small pile of fabric was the only safe space in the world. I'd call it North Pole, South Pole, something like that. The feeling was specific. You're surrounded by a world trying to come in, and the only thing that's standing between you and the world is what you built with your own hands. I hadn't had that feeling for a long time, and then I played Dome Keeper, and somehow it gave me that feeling again. On the surface, Dome Keeper looks like an illustration drawn by a kid on some paper. A tiny astronaut, a glass bubble, a chunky pixel planet. You scroll past it and your brain files it away. Just another 2D indie, another roguelike. And then, about 30 seconds in, you realize that the description was completely wrong. What I want to pull apart is what this game is actually doing underneath that child's drawing. Because there's something precise happening here. Something about the specific part you always want to just go a little further before turning back. That something has a name. And it turns out two people in Germany figured out how to put it together in the course of 72 hours during a gaming competition. The game started as Dome Romantic, with a K at the end instead of a C, which kind of gives this German origin vibe, which is quite cool in my opinion. And I think the name was more honest about what it is. There's something about the game that romanticizes the dome itself. This idea that you're out here alone in a hostile planet and the dome is your world. You find yourself genuinely attached to it in ways that doesn't quite make rational sense. Dome Keeper obviously is more marketable. Dome Romantic is more true. Renee and Anne Habermann, a husband and wife working under the name Bippinbits, built Dome Romantic in 72 hours for a game jam called Ludum Dare 48. The theme that year was Deeper and Deeper. They came in 9th overall, out of thousands of entries. The response was strong enough that they kept building, brought in composer Cameron Paxton, whose score turns out to be doing more work than it first appears. Eventually signed with publisher Raw Fury, which is when they changed the game name and the Steam demo went live. Full release came in September 2022. And then, the developers kept growing the game in ways that no one really anticipated. Post-launch DLCs, new playable characters with distinct mechanics, new game modes that change how the core loop is framed and what it asks of you. Guild assignments, a structured system of recurring objectives that give each run additional direction and purpose, and give experienced players a reason to keep coming back and playing beyond the base experience. A multiplayer mode was added years after the original release. An update as recently as 2026. This game shipped complete on day one, and Bippinbits kept tending to it long after they had any financial reason to do so. Most studios ship and they move on. These two people kept finding new things to add, and they did. That detail matters for how we read the game itself, which I'll come back later on in this video. The rule set is genuinely simple. You have a glass dome on the surface of an alien planet. Waves of hostile creatures attack at regular intervals. Between waves, you descend into the mine beneath the dome with a jetpack and a drill, collect resources from rocks, bring them back up, and spend them on upgrades. The goal in the default mode is to dig deep enough to find an ancient relic, deliver it, and basically escape the planet. That's the core loop. What you choose at the start is the map size, small, medium, large, or huge. And this choice goes deeper than it first appears. On a small map, Dome Keeper is a compact, focused experience. Tight, fast, every descent, a direct greed test against a rapidly filling wave timer. On a larger map, the game almost transforms. You have more breathing room, more resources buried further down, more waves to survive, and crucially, more systems to manage. Small map and large maps are almost entirely different games. The map size really represents what sort of player the game is going to require you to be. Every map is procedurally generated, and something that most players don't really consciously register is that every map has its own color palette. The iron is a different shade, the rock reads slightly different, cobalt shows up in different colors. And even though mechanics are identical between the runs, your brain kind of processes each palette as a new world, a different planet, a fresh set of conditions. It's a lightweight design trick, but the effect is real. The game never quite feels like repetition, even when it technically is. The upgrade tree is worth naming specifically because it's more substantial than the game presents it to be. There are dome attachments that fundamentally change your defensive capabilities, drilling tools that extend your reach underground, speed and efficiency buffs that alter how you move and collect, gadgets that modify the wave system itself. Across enough runs, you encounter build paths that feel genuinely distinct from one another. Defensive layouts, mobility-focused configurations, automation-heavy setups where you're barely underground yourself. And because each run only surfaces a subset of available upgrades through random offerings, the same player will have meaningfully different runs even after dozens of hours. That's real replayability, built into the structure of the game rather than bolted on top of it. The wave timer isn't shown as a countdown, and in fact, the wave timer is an upgrade. It's not shown by default. It's a progress bar that fills as the next attack approaches, and you learn to read it across runs, to feel how much time you have left, to calibrate your current depth against the fill rate. The calibration is the actual skill that the game is teaching without a tutorial, but through repetition and failure. Here's what actually happens when you play. The first few waves are manageable. The rhythm feels satisfying. You go down, dig, come back up, upgrade, the dome handles it. And then, on maybe the third or fourth descent, you spot a vein of cobalt just a few blocks further than you plan to go, or water, which you need for a specific upgrade path. And you think, I have enough time, let's go there. So you dig a little further. This is what the entire game is designed around, not the combat, not the upgrade screen. It's ultimately about how much you can curb your greed. And the game tests you on that during every single descent, calibrated differently each time based on your depth, your upgrades, and how clearly you're reading the clock during that particular run. The cost of miscalculating is not abstract. You arrive at the surface and the enemies are already there. The dome is already taking hits, quite relentlessly. You're scrabbling to operate the laser while the health bar drops, and the resources you went down are sitting in your inventory, not yet converted into anything useful. The greed didn't kill you directly, but it set every condition that might. Now here's where the larger maps introduce something entirely different. The game lets you deploy mining drones and attach automatic drills to your equipment, tools that work independently while you're way on the surface defending the dome. On a small map, you never really need them. You're doing everything yourself, manually. Every descent, a direct test of your judgment. On a larger map though, you start thinking like a system designer. You're not just a miner anymore, but rather, you're building a small automated operation, laying out drill routes, timing your own descents around the machines that are already collecting. It reminds me of the early hours of a game like Satisfactory or Factorio, that specific satisfaction of watching something you built work out without you. The game scales not just in difficulty, but the kind of thinking it requires. And that scaling is what makes the map size choice genuinely consequential rather than just a length setting. The haptic design on a controller, which personally is my preferred method of playing these type of games, goes much deeper than most players would probably consciously register. On a controller, the vibration scales, and you get these subtle vibrations throughout the playthrough that really makes you feel immersed in the world. The audio does the same thing. You might even be able to call it the audio haptic. The game is 2D, intentionally, clearly, deliberately 2D, but play it for a few minutes, and something feels off about that description. The particle effects from the artifacts you find in the mine have this quality that reads three-dimensional. Wave effects, depth cues, light behaviors that don't sit flat on a pixel grid. This isn't a limitation of the engine, it's a choice. The 2D aesthetic is the design, and the 3D moments are smuggled in deliberately, a technique that wouldn't be easy to pull off. There's something else underground worth mentioning, and it changes the feel of the whole game once you notice it. The creatures living in the rocks that you're drilling through are non-hostile. They don't attack you. They don't react to you as a threat. They're just there, small, odd, often oddly charming, going about whatever they're doing in the dark. They make the underground feel inhabited rather than empty. It feels alive. And that creates a dichotomy the game never explicitly points out, but which you feel throughout every run. Underground is actually the vivid world. That's where life is. The organisms, the ore veins glowing in different palette colors, the artifacts with strange visual effects, the sense of a world that exists independently from you. The surface, where your dome is where you return to defend it. It's the hostile frontier. Everything trying to kill you comes from the surface. Everything curious and alive is underground. When a run is going well, when the upgrades are building correctly, you've managed greed, there's a point where the dome stops feeling like a liability and starts feeling like a home. The laser hums at the right frequency. The defense feels solid. You get a pet, a cat in my case. It does almost nothing practically, just sits there, creates atmosphere. But with the cat, the dome feels entirely different. Occupied, warm, worth protecting in a way that goes beyond the numbers. The feeling the game produces at its best is what I describe as cozy but dangerous. The dome is small and warm and yours. The world outside is vast and relentless and trying to get in, and the safety isn't given. It has to be maintained, wave by wave. The combination is a very specific feeling. If you grew up building blanket forts, you already know exactly what that feels like. The honest version of this analysis has to include some stuff that, in my opinion, the game doesn't do too well. The game has a natural session ceiling. It's designed to be visited, not lived in. And if you push past what the loop wants to give you in a single sitting, it starts to feel mechanical in a way that works kind of against it. But let me balance that against what the game has actually built across its lifespan. The upgrade tree is broader than it first appears. With enough build variety, defensive configurations, automation-heavy setups, mobility-focused loadouts, the experienced players are still finding combinations that they haven't tried. The guild assignment system adds structured objectives that give each run a layer of direction beyond its base loop. New game modes reframe the same core mechanics in ways that shift what the game is asking of you. The replayability is real, and it's accumulated over time rather than being presented at launch, which is a meaningful distinction. And sometimes, when real life is heavy, what you actually need is a world where your priorities are completely shifted. Not a distraction exactly, more like a recalibration. Dome Keeper gives you that very cleanly. For the duration of a run, the only thing that matters to you is whether you stayed too long or whether you should go back in time. The threats are visible. The tools are defined. The problem in front of you is clear and bounded. That kind of focused, manageable pressure, a world with one problem that has one solution, is something a lot of much bigger, much louder games can't actually deliver. And then there's the thing I keep coming back to about how Bippinbits treated this game. They didn't make this and move on. Guild assignments, new modes, multiplayer, DLC updates, still arriving in 2026. That's not how you treat a product. That's how you treat something you actually love making. And the game mirrors that exactly. The dome needs maintenance or it dies. So does the thing you care about building. You're underground, resources are scattered, and the wave timer is filling up. Go deeper or go back? Dome Keeper asks that question every descent, across every run, on every map. The answer is never the same twice, because the map is different, the upgrades are different, and how clearly you can read your own relationship with the clock depends on things that the game can't control. How tired you are, how confident you feel, how much you want what's 3 blocks further down. What 2 people figured out in 72 hours is that tension doesn't need elaborate systems to feel real. It needs one honest question, asked on a timer, inside a world small enough that losing it means something. The child's drawing on a surface is the whole point. Small by design, the stakes fit inside a glass bubble. Dome Keeper is the kind of thing that you might not notice if it was on the side of the road. But if you pick it up and you actually take a look at it, it turns out to be a gem. The kind that gives you something a lot of bigger, louder games never quite manage. A real feeling, a specific one, earned honestly, inside a world that fits inside a blanket fort.